Welcome to Learning to Glow, a show about wellness, skin health, and self-development. I'm your host, Jess. I'm a mom, entrepreneur, and skincare expert. I'm so excited to share tips on how to achieve healthy skin and bring amazing guests in the field of health, fitness, aging gracefully, and personal growth. Let's explore all different ways we can take care of ourselves as women, both inside and out, to truly shine. So let's get glowing. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Learning to Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jess. Thank you so much for being here with me today. We have an amazing guest, Ciara Burton. She is a renowned personal life coach and trainer with over a decade of experience. Known as the life coach for moms, Ciara's work has positively impacted the lives of over 800 people. She specializes in helping working women, especially mothers, overcome feelings of overwhelm, anxiety, and disconnection from their inner selves. Ciara's four-step approach helps women love their bodies into alignment, train their minds, feed their souls, and become sovereign women. I loved this conversation and talking with Ciara. We touched upon so many different topics all in one episode, dealing with overwhelm as moms, modeling empathy for our kids, depression and anxiety. Such wonderful wisdom from Ciara, just to name a few of the things that we've talked about in this episode. And one of the topics I wanted to ask her about is intuition. So I loved what she had to share about this, and I hope that you do too. I'll link how you can learn more about her and find her online. Her program is called Becoming Her, and she's simply incredible. So I hope you love this episode as much as I do. And here is Ciara. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Learning to Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jess, and today we have Ciara, and I'm so happy that you're here with us today. Welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yay. So you are a life coach. You have an amazing program. It's called Becoming Her. I just want to talk about so many different things with you today. We were just chatting before we hit record. There's so many fun things that we can talk about and that I think my listeners are going to absolutely love. But I would love to start with, if you could just share a little bit about your background, like how did you get to find this work? How did you find yourself working with moms? And we could go from there.
Oh, I love where we're going with this. And it's so fun because one thing I learned early on in my development is how to ditch the script, right? And just connect into my heart and share that which is living within me now. So when it comes to my bio, I literally get to create and invent it differently every time I'm with, a new person. And I didn't trust myself, to do that, let's say 10 years ago, because I wanted to look good, be perfect, get it right, say it right based on the person I was sitting in front of. And that's no longer a paradigm that I live within in my own mind. Speaking and sharing from the heart, which is where the soul resides in a human being, has been my mission as I've engaged in my own healing journey, especially after becoming a mom. Connecting to my own divinity has been an intention. And even though I've been coaching and training since 2009 in the personal development world, I started in health and fitness. My first business was called Fitting Into You. And it was all about dressing in a way that reflected your uniqueness and the qualities and characteristics that make you you. So it's about allowing your soul to shine through your physical representation. And that was in 2009 when I was in my 20s, my mid 20s. And as I grew into myself, my business grew. And before becoming a mom, I took my personal development so seriously. And I worked with some of the most amazing mentors who now train the United States military in soul development, which is incredible. And learning from them and working alongside them has been so impactful for me. But in my experience of deep diving into my own soul, who am I really? Who am I not? Who do I want to be as a mother? Seeing this as a super important role, raising the next generation of leaders that will one day take care of us. I took that seriously. And what's interesting is what I learned is you can't prepare with your mind for motherhood and for the transition that would take place. it really is an experience of not planning ahead. It's an experience of being so wholly present in the moment for that which is coming through between you and another soul. And that was really challenging for me because my birth was difficult, unmedicated, 3 days long, home birthing
Mm.
experience. And what's interesting, I found out after the fact, is it mirrored my own birth with my mother. She ended up in a C section, and I ended up birthing my son naturally in our guest room on the floor, Herculesing him out because I was just so ready, to be free from the suffering that I experienced in that moment. And it's an interesting full circle moment because, I endured that which my mother was never able to, right? She never had the choice,
Mm.
right? So there was a lot to unpack in that time. But as I said, I started in health and fitness, and then I moved into mindset and around, a little bit of soul work. But then motherhood took me in to this dark night of the soul experience where I was really confronting, like, who am I really? And I'm so grateful for that experience now. But it really was the closest I've gotten to contemplating, I would say, my own death and my own existence. And it's sometimes these moments in our lives where we have to dig deep to really find the purity of who we are as a soul living in this human experience. And that's the work that I now teach women who are struggling with a lack of purpose in their lives, a lack of identity, people who are struggling to get in touch with their own radiance, with their voice, with the light of who they are. I work with people now to bring forward their divinity, the soul of who they are. And when you can connect to that, you can easily get in touch with strength, with patience, with your own light, with fortitude, which is courage and resilience and authenticity. These little essences, which I call virtues, are the pathway to emerge as leaders in our lives. And I didn't really realize that I wasn't that until I went through this harder moment in my life. So I would say my work now lives in the soul space. And it's interesting to have gone from the physical, so the body, to the mental space, to just briefly tapping into the soul, to then going through this darker experience that took me into really my spirituality and what it feels like to commune with my creator, even when I'm just living life as a mom trying to hustle my kids out the door to get to school on time. I am so in touch with the awareness that I get to choose who I'm going to be, in each moment. And I didn't realize that before, even when I was doing the mindset work. I was constantly looking for the next band aid, right? That next positive mindset shift. And what I learned is it's not actually about that at all. It's about acknowledging, hey, I'm not feeling enough in this moment. I'm feeling like I just want to cry and scream and yell. And I know this isn't the right time, but I am going to make some time to cry, to scream, to yell. And I'm going to release this stuck energy that's living in my body so that I can go free from it and really emerge as the me that I really am, the lighter, more confident, more radiant me. So that's who I am and what I do now. And it's been a journey of listening to my inner self, of connecting to my intuition and really trusting that voice living within. And it has healed me and it continues to heal me.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. I love what you said about not being able to really plan ahead when you have kids, right? Like there's no thinking your way through it. It just, especially when something comes up that you had no intentions of happening with your kids and you have to sort of figure out what the next step is. And I feel like what you were saying and how you react in the world now versus how you did it before, I feel like a lot of women, we don't know how to do that because maybe there's so much noise or, we're not taught to do that, first of all. And we have to really keep going and keep up with all the things that we're supposed to keep up with, right? So how do you begin to go through that process? Like, how do you go from that before you to how you can handle life now?
Oh my gosh, this is a great question because really what you're speaking to is what does it feel like to live in the world today?
Mm.
And most people, I don't think, have ever really thought that we really are just souls inhabiting a human body who are here to learn and grow. And if that's true, and there is this divine spark within me, I'm curious about that. But what keeps me from connecting to that? It's all the noise in society. And this is really interesting because the path I'm speaking to is the path of critical thought, the path of personal responsibility and making decisions based on what's best for me and everyone that I care about. It's the path of discernment around what is the choice I need to make now in this moment, even around what am I going to eat today? How am I going to move today? And in society, the noise is so loud. And if we don't have our mind managed and we're not connected to what matters most to us, and we're not connected to a bigger vision for ourselves and our lives, in a way, society and the world we live in is going to dictate where we're spending our time and where we're placing our focus. So a good example is just surfing Instagram unconsciously. You're choosing, even though it doesn't feel like it, because for many of us, it becomes a habit or a pattern where we don't even really realize we've opened the app and here we are scrolling at the same time every day. We're choosing to place our time and focus on things that don't really matter. And a lot of people don't realize that if you don't have a vision of who you are and where you want to go and grow, you will unconsciously spend time thinking about things that don't support your growth. So, for example, overwhelm, or maybe what's wrong with you from a health perspective. Maybe you might be too focused on what's not working versus focused on what is working. Or maybe you're focused on the next best thing and you're losing yourself and your thoughts about that. If you're overwhelmed, you're likely in over-analysis, paralysis, over-Googling, over-researching, overthinking. And most people think that that's going to give them the results that they want, but it's not, because it's taking you further and further away from your highest self, from the wisdom that is living within you. So in this example, we have to take the unconventional approach. And rather than find the next expert, the next self-help book, or the next podcast episode, we need to take time to learn how to create space in our own brains, in our own minds, to be able to connect to our own inner wisdom, to connect to our souls. Now, the wisdom lives within, but are you too busy enough to be able to hear it? And this takes a little bit of practice. So the second pillar in the work that I teach is called mind management. So first we have to get connected to the body. That's called the Love Your Body series. Then next we go into train your mind, because we need to learn how to direct our mind toward that which we want to cultivate and grow within ourselves. So we eliminate distraction. And most women don't even really realize how distracted they were. We're all distracted. Unless you are intent on not being distracted, you're likely distracted and in overwhelm. And then the third pillar is feed your soul. You can't get connected to your soul if your mind is lost in overwhelm. If you're letting society dictate how you're spending your time, if you're letting your unconscious patterns run the show in your life, it's impossible to connect to the higher wisdom when you don't have the spaciousness within you to connect. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's amazing. And, so many things actually came up for me when you were describing that, because I feel like the distraction piece, that if you're not really connected to what do you want and what is that value that you are shooting for, it is easy to just, if you're like mindlessly scrolling, or maybe you're seeing another family on Instagram that's doing this, then you think, okay, I should probably be doing that too. And it goes back to like, well, if you're not reevaluating what's important to us as a family, what are our goals as a family, it's easy. I this has happened to me with like what I'm doing with my kids, where I'm like, I should be doing this because that's what you do. And that's what the people are in my community are doing. And then you think, well, wait, is that right for my kid? Or is that right for me? And I think that's really like such an important step to realize when you're dealing with all of this. And I think another thing is when you're distracted when you're talking about the doom scrolling,
Mm-hmm.
going through Instagram and everything. And I think, and I'm totally guilty of this, but when you get that feeling of overwhelm, you just kind of take a seat on the couch and like zone out. And I feel like that is, then you've lost the plot.
Yeah.
You're really distracted at that point. So I think those are two things that I want to talk a little bit more about, and really not being able to have that, getting away from being so distracted that you can't listen to your inner voice, because I think that is something, that intuition that we all have. I think that's why people go and take a shower and they're like, I had the best idea, because for once there wasn't constant noise. And I want to talk more about intuition too, because this is just something that I was mentioning this before, I've been really called to getting more in tune with my own intuition. And I've had in my past, like, so many areas of proof where I'm like, I have this. Like, if I can listen to it, if I can get still enough to listen to it, I do know it's there. And I've seen proof of that.
Yeah. And so for you, it's really just about connecting into that voice and knowing what it sounds like. And when you know what it sounds like, then it's bringing it forward even more. And you're going to need not much time, but intentional, devotional time to hearing that wisdom within. And there's many ways you can do it: through meditation, through journaling, through prayer, through walking in nature, and just allowing yourself to be in new and different environments where you can sense and notice something different than what you're noticing now. So really, unless you change your patterns and habits, in a way, you're recreating the past every day. So if you have routines, your days probably look pretty similar. Would you say that's true?
Mm-hmm.
So if you
Yes.
want different results in your life, you're going to have to learn to show up differently, because the patterns are really dictating your results. So if we
Mm-hmm.
just add in a few new and different patterns that support you in generating enough spaciousness in your mind, you will very naturally begin to hear that voice within. So let's call it emptying the filing cabinet. For me, getting in nature helps me anchor into the present moment. For others, journaling everything that's not working for them first before communing with their intuition or their higher self is what they need to do. So we all have to find our own ways to meet ourselves, to be able to hear ourselves. And so putting some new habits and rhythms in place that bring forward either intuition or inspiration. And I should say intuition and inspiration. You really want both. So, what are the communication mechanisms of the soul? It's intuition, inspiration. So, for example, it's a moment of maybe thinking of the best friend, and then all of a sudden later on in the day, you see that best friend call you. So, that's a little ping or a little reminder that, hey, maybe there's more here than just my own human willpower. Like maybe source is at play here, right? Maybe there's something more than I could ever comprehend as a human being on the planet at this time at play in these synchronistic experiences that I'm having. So when you have those moments, really take a pause to say, ooh, I see you. I see this. There's something magical here. And just call in more of those experiences. So what I like to say, this is a distinction in my course, is I say, more please. That feels really good. That
Mm.
friend may need me today, or I may need that friend today. And then I answer the phone. So it's these little moments we want to call in more of, like the surprise gift that's left at the front door that you weren't expecting. Or yesterday I received a message from a client who shared with me her gratitude for the time we've spent together. And she said she looked back on her 2023 and all of her highlights came after she did her Becoming Her course. And she just said, I thank you so much, because this was an experience I couldn't have even comprehended, initially when I said yes, would give me these kinds of results. I needed to receive that message in that moment because I was working through something interpersonally, and her message landing within my space at that time allowed me to put down what I was wrestling with in my own mind and be able to take that deep breath and connect into my purpose and my mission a little bit more. So I love believing that we are all interconnected. All of us here on the planet at this time are interconnected, and we really are just here to walk each other home. So even that person that speeds by you and gives you the finger, and you feel this reaction in your body, trust that that is there for you to learn how to become less reactive and less triggered by that. So if I notice my reactive nature showing up, if I was someone in that circumstance, what my unconscious programming wants me to do is to give him the bird and to speed up and maybe lay on the horn, right? But that's not who I want to be as the example to my children. So even though I feel that come up in my body and I want to react in that way, because that's probably how I used to react before having kids, I make the conscious choice not to. And I decide to do things differently. And now who I am in the car in those moments is somebody who looks at my kids, who notice the man do that. And I say, you know what? I wonder if he's just having a tough day today. And then we talk about it for a moment. And sometimes we even pray, may he find peace today. And it's really special because I can still feel the tension of, let's call it my old identity that would have been reactive, a little uncontrolled, maybe a little vocal without thinking about it. I can still feel that part of me, but I'm making a choice to show up differently, to show up as a leader, and to hear from my little children, who I'm a shepherd for, what's coming up for them as they witness this for themselves, because I am their role model in that moment. And how do I want to demonstrate the noble path forward is what I ask myself often. And in asking myself these questions and going slow and choosing to let go of my reactive nature, I've been able to become a little bit more proud of the leader that I'm becoming because I'm clear of my vision. And my life circumstances are actually helping me through hardship become her. I see them as an opportunity to become more like the me I envision I'm becoming. I hope this is helpful. To recap, you want to get connected to your intuition, you've got to make space in your brain. And when you have that space in your brain, it sort of sticks with you. When you begin to connect with that voice will guide you, even when you're driving in the car and you have a reactive driver who speeds past you. That voice, once you connect with it, will guide you. Hey, Ciara, you don't have to act like that anymore. There's a new way. Let's lean into that. And the human part of me is like, yeah, that's probably a good thing to do. And then I engage in the new identity I'm building in myself. It's all a choice, yet it doesn't feel like that oftentimes when we're living in this human experience. We are not the sum of our reactions. We can make changes to who we're being in every moment, but it takes mind management to get there. Is that helpful, Jess?
Yes, so the mind management piece is huge, and I think using that pause too, of because you're talking about being reactive. It's so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we feel a certain way and we want to act a certain way right away. So having that pause and then being that role model for your kids of what empathy looks like. What is he going through? It's like that story I'll never forget. And I can't remember the author who told the story, but I'm sure you've heard it, of the man who had kids in the subway and they were acting unruly and jumping all over the place. And this man is like, why doesn't that dad take care of his kids? Like, this is ridiculous. And finally he said something to him. And the dad was like, we're just coming from the hospital. My wife just passed away. And to really think about, oh my God, of course he's not in the mood to be disciplining his kids. Such a great lesson of empathy, and to have that with your kids is so beautiful. That's something that they can have with them.
We have to teach it through our embodiment. We can't just teach it through our words. If we are not demonstrating the words that we say, they are not going to learn it. And then we get mad and angry when they are not kind kids. But sometimes we just need to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, how can I be more kind? Especially if individuals who are listening are in a marriage where there's some friction, where they're not feeling seen. They may be unkind to their partners, and their kids may be experiencing that. So then you wonder why your children are unkind. And taking personal responsibility doesn't mean blaming, shaming, or guilting yourself. It's just saying, aha, I can see where they learned that from, and I can now demonstrate a new way forward. Even though my husband and I are disconnected, I am going to intend to be more kind and loving to this man that I'm still choosing to spend my life with. What does that look like? It really looks like observing yourself in that relationship and choosing to be a little bit kinder and a little bit more loving every day for the next handful of days until it becomes a little bit easier. As you embody that which you're teaching your kids with your words, they will begin to actually learn it and integrate it into their lives without even knowing it, because they're just watching you and they're just modeling after you. Our duty as women and mothers who are self-aware, we are called to embody the way forward. And I like to just say to embody goodness. As I embody goodness and continue to take responsibility for how I'm showing up in my life, I'm teaching them to do the same. I am perfectly imperfect, just doing my best. And when I react and yell, because I still have some of these moments, as soon as I notice it, I get into asking for forgiveness. And I talk to them about it. And I welcome them into my processing because I want them to learn how to do the same. It starts with us. They're watching us in more ways than we could even know. I heard this quote and it's stuck with me, and it's 93% of our communication in general with other human beings is nonverbal. Only 7% is verbal. So people are responding to who we are, not necessarily what we say.
That's so true. That's so true. And, especially with our kids, when I heard a quote from, I don't know if you know who Rob Bell is, but he said, our kids are learning from us all the time. And sometimes it's with our words. It's usually not. And it's just them watching what we do. It's like such a powerful learning tool for them. When I first started my wellness journey, I had already been in the skincare industry for years, working on client skin and as an educator for multiple skincare brands. When I learned about how the toxins in our personal care and beauty products could have a negative impact on our health, I knew I needed to make a change. I was used to the result-driven products that I was working with, and I was not happy with the natural products on the market at that time. Although they were safer and cleaner, they did not meet my expectations for results. I created Simply Just Skincare to deliver the results my clients demanded from their products while using natural, toxin-free ingredients. You can check out my clients' results and reviews on my website, simplyjustskincare.com. In 30 days, my clients have reported more hydrated skin, less appearance of fine lines and wrinkles, and more of an overall glow. Our top sellers include our Repair Toner, our Hydrating Undo Serum with hyaluronic acid, and more. I am offering my listeners 20% off their first order with code PODCAST. Check it out in the link in my show notes to get glowing today. When a mom comes to you as a client, we talked about overwhelm, but what are some of the other struggles that they have, that they come to you with, that they need help with?
Wow, so many. Everything from disconnect in relationships. What I've noticed over the years is there's a yearning for more depth in friendships with other women.
Yeah.
There's a deep desire to feel celebrated, loved, and adored by the women, in the individual's lives. So they come to me with a yearning for community of like-minded people. They come to me really when they're in an identity crisis. Who am I? And what am I here for? I'm tired of living for this routine every day. And I know there's got to be more to life than just this. And some even realize in their pursuit of success. So, meaning we're going to have this home and then we're going to decorate it well. And then we're going to move on to the next home and the lake house and have all the things and keep up with the Joneses. There's a deep feeling of loss. And what's wild is they have more things that they've always dreamed of wanting, but they're sacrificing themselves and their soul in the process. So really what we're doing in those moments is connecting them to the light within them so that they can live for more than just the accumulation of things, which we all know is never permanent, right? And if we're continuing to grasp and force ourselves to climb the ladder of success, we will never find the fulfillment and the happiness that we seek. What's really neat is once you learn how to feel happiness and fulfillment within your being, so within yourself, you very naturally and effortlessly will manifest and attract in, all by the way of the law of attraction, that which you desire most. So, what I encourage people to do, and a lot of this podcast has been anchored into this, I encourage people to focus in on this distinction. And this distinction is one that I speak about a lot in my work, and it's be more. Focus your efforts on being more and doing less. When you become the woman you know you are meant to be, you will attract in people, places, and things that are vibrationally aligned for you with more ease. And sometimes for the woman who's just beginning her journey, she needs to just start by saying no to that which is not aligned for her now. So, social obligations and engagements, coffee and a walk with a friend that gossips. When you know something is not aligned for you and you keep getting that ping and ding, that is your intuition saying, hey, this isn't really good for you. Maybe you should take a step back. Or remember the last time we did this? That didn't feel good. We're trying to get out of drinking too much on a weekday. We're trying to let go of alcohol. Who would I be if I said no? Who would I be if I just stayed home and spent some time doing what I really want to do right now, which may be like reading the book, right? So saying no really could be the first access point to a deeper yes. We have to clear out the old to generate access through the space we create for ourselves for the aligned new. Does that resonate, Jess?
Oh, so much. Just when you were talking, the one thing that came to my mind was this feels like it would decrease anxiety
Oh,
for
yeah.
people. When you have this, I have to do this, and I know it's not the best choice for me. Like even what you just said with like the walk and the coffee with the gossip friend. Um, if that doesn't align with you, I could see that just stirring up a bunch of anxiety. But then you feel like, well, maybe I should, or maybe you are creating that connection, like some of your mom clients say, I wish I had deeper female connections. So they say yes to the coffee with that friend just because they think that's the right thing to do. But then I can see how just saying yes to these things that don't align with you just stir up so much anxiety.
Yeah, so it keeps you back in the old familiar identity. We talked about this earlier, how we
Mm-hmm.
recreate the past in the present moment. So if you've always said yes to this friend and you can sort of predict how that walk and that coffee chat will go, are you still going to choose that? Because you know the result is that you feel bad and guilty because you've now engaged in gossip regarding a mutual friend that you also love and care about. And it doesn't feel good. It diminishes your light to then be thinking about, should I have said that? Is that going to get back to her? You don't want that energy lingering with you. And if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't built up the strength yet to maybe say, hey, I don't want to talk about that anymore, or I don't want to talk about her anymore, it doesn't feel good to me. I don't feel good when I'm engaging in conversations about other people. If you're not at a place of confidence where you can say that to the other, it may just be wise and noble to just say no to that walk and talk until you can cultivate the confidence to really get crystal clear. I'm not available for gossip anymore. It doesn't feel good to me, and I'm doing my best to work that out of my system. I find it is so easy to engage, and it does cause me to feel close and connected to you, but it's not for me anymore. I feel icky afterward, and I would like to let go of that icky feeling. And I know that talking in this way is just not serving me anymore. It takes some time to be able to get words around that and then have the confidence and the courage to speak those words. So sometimes we just need to say no and trust that in our every no, we are developing the confidence in knowing who we are, what works and what doesn't. And then we just start to lean into what works and we let go of what doesn't work. What's interesting is you asked me, like, what are some of the problems you solve for women mothers? What's fascinating is I could give you a list of 50 things, because what's neat is a self-aware woman it solves all of the problems that she is confronting. You don't need therapy to rehearse the past and to talk about, the pains and relive them. That is helpful. And we do that in the Becoming Her course. When something comes up from someone's childhood, we revisit that, but we revisit it with intention in order to unlock power from that time and a new perspective to help you with forward movement. So it doesn't make sense to revisit the past because you're nurturing and generating strength and conditioning in the old familiar patterns. It doesn't make sense to revisit those unless you have a clear intention as to where you want to go and grow. When you have that clear intention, revisiting the past makes sense because you have a bigger why around it. So a self-aware, empowered woman who's moving through her life as a leader recognizes this, and this is part of mind management. So to put it really simply, depression is the experience of living in the past. That may be the past moment. So what it was like to right before you dropped your kids off at school today. That is depression. It's feeling like there's a dark cloud looming because you're replaying events from the past over and over and over again in your mind, and then you feeling a certain way about it. Anxiety is interesting because it's sort of the opposite, but it creates a similar yet a slightly different feeling. It's fearing the future. It's almost mapping out worst case scenarios, which really are born from your past experiences, but it's all generated on fear. So anxiety is overwhelm and fear about a moment that is to come in this day, in the future, even this moment that is completely made up around your business and what you said you would create by December of this year, and we're only in January. That is going to create a feeling within you in the now moment. And you will make decisions around who you're being based on that feeling that's living within you. So here's another distinction I'll share with your audience. Most people are feeling their way through life. They feel a strong feeling and then they act based on that feeling. And if you feel a strong feeling and you act, what that might look like is defensiveness. What that might look like is maybe silence. Like my mom used to get into silence and she would aggressively clean the countertops. So even though she wasn't speaking, her energy was speaking to me. I knew she was navigating something difficult in her own mind. So our feelings, for most human beings, our strong feelings are dictating our reactions. So for example, even if you get a testimonial from a client and you're over the moon, then you just might want to talk about it and you have a great day. I don't recommend that either because that's ungrounded. That's ungrounded where you're still letting your feelings control your action. A self-aware, empowered woman reverses this process. She thinks, feels, then acts. You think first based on who you know you're becoming. So I know I'm becoming a more patient mother who's really present to ask my kids questions and listen. I know I'm becoming a woman who's not, quote, on to the next thing. I don't pack my calendar to a point where we're hustling and I'm nearing burnout as I grow my business while my kids are at school. Cancel. That is not who I am anymore. I'm becoming a patient woman who is in touch with my inner rhythms from a health and vitality standpoint. And I prioritize my health above everything else because that's what gets me through to this realization of this vision. Think first, feel second. Okay, well, who am I? When I'm this woman, how do I want to feel? I want to feel intuitive. I want to feel inspired. I want to feel connected to source and nature and the people that I love most. I want to feel connected to the meaningful. Okay, so how do I feel? Inspired, intuitive, tapped into nature, adventurous, spontaneity. Great. And now I'm going to act. Now I'm going to act based on that. So what are some actions a woman like that would take? Hey kids, let's go for a hike. We have a window of opportunity. Let's go check it out. Let's go hang out outside. Or hey boys, do you want to sit down and, I would like to read this book with you, right? Rather than we have to get our reading minutes done. It's like, hey, I bought you this book and I've never read it. I would love to read this book with you. So now we're in control of our actions because we're choosing them. Whereas the other approach, it doesn't feel like we're choosing our actions because our actions are very much so born out of our feelings. And what's unfortunate about this is then the guilt and shame come after the fact, or the overwhelm and hustle. Let's just say if you're an anxious person and you overplan and prepare for a trip and then something goes wrong, like there's a blizzard and your flight gets changed, you lose it. And you can't help but stir in your own fear about what could come because you planned perfectly. And how could this happen where you've planned for everything, but not for this? And now you have to shift, tweak, and transform your approach based on this new surprising circumstance. In life, there's always going to be surprises. So we have to learn how to just roll with it and choose who we're going to be in the midst of it. And life is so much easier that way. So think first, feel, then act. That's the shift and that's the distinction. And most human beings are doing the opposite.
I love that because that goes back to, I love how you talked about anxiety and depression. First of all, that's so good. That's so insightful. And when you go back to what you talked about in the beginning, which is that mind management, without that, you're letting your feelings, a lot of times the negative feelings just ruin the show, like take over. And then your actions are coming from a place where you're not going to, and I know this for me, like I'm not going to get the results I want if I'm coming from that anxious part of me. I'm not going to make the decisions that are going to get me the results that I want if I'm coming from that place. And that shows me like that how important that mindset piece is in all of this. So, and I know we've talked about your program a little bit throughout this episode, but I'd love to hear more about it. It's empowering for us to be able to do these things and see such a great result and have those tools in your hand. So I know you have more of these in your program. So share more with us.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to just begin this by kicking it up to a bigger why. It's like, why would we engage in this kind of work? And yes, it is to feel better. But when we think about the legacy we want to live on this earth, that'll kick it up a couple notches. It's not just about feeling better and finding solutions to get through the day. It's really being able to answer the question, like, who am I? Why am I here? Why did I attract in these people, this life, these circumstances, these things? I help people make sense of that. And what I'm most proud of is I began this work, right when my kids were old enough and they just started school, this particular work with moms. And I had gone far enough in my own healing journey that I was really ready to share wisdom and to teach what I was learning. And my approach is unconventional. I always say, when you go to therapy and you're disconnected in your marriage, what most people think they need is a new communication strategy, or they need to schedule sex around the kids' schedules, right? Or around their bedtime. And it's like, that is not the solution to the deeper problem of disconnect. And so we have to take unconventional approaches, which is what my course is, if we want to get results. And how do we know conventional approaches aren't working? Well, look around. We're living in a world right now where the modern mother is suffering, where the woman and mother is suffering. It is rare, but possible, to come across many vitality charged, inspired, excited human beings on the planet at this time. More people are talking about their problems than they are celebrating their successes in life. In fact, you could be somebody who someone else says brags if you even talk about your new and good results. Cancel, cancel. In this case, we need to surround ourselves with a community of individuals. And this is what I'm most proud of, because the Becoming Her course has turned into a thriving community of self-healing women and mothers who are raising our next generation of leaders. And when I think about many of the problems we're navigating on earth at this time, I have a lot of hope for our children, because I feel like they are souls that have the capabilities to help us solve big problems that we haven't been able to solve up until this time. And if we as mothers can walk forward doing our own work and really healing from a lot of generational programming. So for example, oftentimes as women and mothers, we look in the mirror when we become a mom and we see our mom in us and us in our own mom. It's wild, but that spans the generational lines. And if we can do the work to end some of that trauma that our past ancestors did not intend to pass down to us, but it's passed down through our DNA, we are giving our children the opportunity to be set free from that. So for example, on my dad's side, there's a need to lean into substances in order to feel better, or to alcohol, right? And to look for happiness and fulfillment out there in the world through substances by numbing, rather than doing the work to check in and say, hey, what's actually making me sad, versus covering up the sadness through alcohol. So what am I doing now? Well, I'm demonstrating to my children that I don't need alcohol to have fun, to feel better. I'm teaching them that boys do cry and that it's okay to cry. But growing up in my family, I was taught that big boys don't cry and girls don't have to cry either, because my dad was an athlete and he wanted me to be an athlete. And he didn't know what to do when I was crying, because I'm a sensitive soul and I cry a lot. So how do we shift the generational programming? It's by doing the work to become the leaders in our lives we know we can be. And that is the bigger why within the Becoming Her entity. But we follow a system. A lot of women are still dealing with body image stories, even later on in their lives. We have to clean all that up, because that's where you're losing power. Every time you look in the mirror and you feel I'm not good enough, or you start to judge parts of your body that you've judged since you were young, we have to unwind that. So initially we go through the Love Your Body series, where we start to get connected to this physical vessel that houses our soul. Second, we move into the Train Your Mind series, where we reprogram the mind to believe different beliefs. So if you believe I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, she can do it and I can't, I'll never be successful, we get clear on the stories you tell yourself and we rewire them. So we work with quantum physics to rewire the brain to take a different path. The third portion is the Feed Your Soul series. This is when we get connected to really your soul's blueprint. Who are you? And what's fascinating, Jess, is if you were to interview your best friend, the people close to you, and you were to say, who am I to you? They would magnify back to you your soul qualities. And I'm wondering if what they say to you, you know to be true about you. Oftentimes when people do this exercise, they get feedback back and they're amazed by it. They're amazed. And I'll say to them, do you not see this in yourself? And they'll say, no, I didn't really see this in myself. And that is our work. For you to be able to see yourself and to be able to own these qualities that other people see in you so easily. That is our work in the Feed Your Soul series, for you to know the light of who you are. And then the final aspect, it's called Living as a Sovereign Woman. It's the experience of stepping into your power, given all the work we had done up until that point, and getting stronger and stronger in moving through the world as an embodied leader. And that's where we end our deep interpersonal one-on-one journey together. And then you enter into my alumni program, which is free. And every month we meet and we have deep soul-centered conversations around topics of our time. And we practice speaking from the heart and bringing the awarenesses that are living in the heart out the throat and through the voice. So I encourage people to get uncomfortable, to practice sharing, because how do we get stronger at anything in life? Literally, it's what we tell our children. You have to practice. You have to practice. You have to practice. And I tell people, better in here in this safe space with like-minded women than out there in the presence of people who cannot handle your truth, relationships you've grown out of. When you start to step into your light, some of those relationships will indeed fall away. And if they don't fall away, they will be encouraged to take new shape and form. This is how we also transform a marriage. When you do the work, your husband, your partner will naturally be called to begin to think about doing his own work. But when you start to show up in the light of who you are, a lot of those patterns that did not work previously will not be at play anymore. Why? Because you choose to not engage in them anymore. It takes two people to engage in a pattern in a relationship. If you get off the hamster wheel of pattern repetition, he won't have anyone to engage with, right? So it's amazing. And that's why I tell you I could give you a list of 50 problems that this program solves. But that's because when you step into the light of who you are, you can solve any problem that comes your way. You just have to have the confidence and the awareness of who you are and who you are not to be able to meet this problem and move through it, becoming stronger and more confident as you do. This is why I believe we're here in this lifetime, to learn and grow as souls. How does that land?
That's beautiful. That sounds like such an amazing program. I love what you said about the partner too, because really, when you it's almost like something at a more superficial level. When you like start doing something healthier in the
Yeah.
kitchen, you're not saying
No.
anything. You're like, I'm not, don't, you're not saying you need to do this and you need to do that, because we all know we can't change anyone else. But all of a sudden that person's like, oh, well, maybe I should start doing that same thing too. And, it's just funny how that ripple effect happens. But you are amazing. I am so, so grateful that you were able to come on and share with us. You just, everything that you said was so amazing. And I loved learning from you. I definitely will link your program for everybody to check out. Everybody will want to check you out. Do you have social media as well?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jess. I actually have a new guide that'll come out at the end of the month. So depending on when this podcast airs, if you go to the lifecoachformoms.com, that page will be coming soon, where you can get the Burned Out Mom Blueprint, where it'll highlight some of what we talked about today. And then eventually, in a couple weeks, it'll lead to a little mini course where you can take yourself through an experience and really look at how you're doing with the distinction of being. Am I proud of who I'm being? Or am I more so focused on what I'm doing and getting things done and checking off the list and repeating the routine every day? Cancel, cancel. The mini course is designed to encourage you to look in the mirror and to see your opportunities, which means some of your struggles, as a pathway to become a higher expression of you. We just have to move through them, but we have to look at them first. So the lifecoachformoms.com, you can get the Burned Out Mom Blueprint. And then on social media, I'm Ciara, Ciara M. Burton, just my name. And I post more so on stories than on the feed. But I'm grateful that my business has just grown very organically through referrals and through people just wanting to be within the community. So, however you're called to reach out, by email, through my website, ciara@ciaraburton.com is my email. Be in touch and we can engage in a conversation that may just change your life. When you step into the leadership role, everything changes, from how you feel about yourself to the natural rhythms that shift and transform within your family unit. So I'm here for it, and I'm happy to help where I can.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. And we're going to have you come back on.
I'd love to come on.
There's even more that we could talk about. I could listen. We could do this all day. So we'll have you back. And thank you so much once again.
Thank you. I look forward to listening back. Lots of love.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please subscribe and review so we can reach more people who want to learn to glow alongside us. See you next time.